One of my favorites.
Well, you have good taste, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
To end up where we did, middle of nowhere, completely cut off from the lives we left behind.
Hola amigos y amigas de Spoiler Time. Hoy tengo el placer y la alegría, como podrán ver, de entrevistar a uno de mis compositores favoritos de bandas sonoras para películas y series de televisión, quien acaba de hacer un score maravilloso para Salvajes o The Wilds, esta nueva serie de Amazon Prime Video. Conmigo el señor Cliff Martinez. Cliff, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time and for this interview.
Well, I always enjoy talking about myself, so yeah, happy to do it.
You composed like 40 scores for movies. You worked with amazing directors like Steven Soderbergh or Nicholas Winding Refn, and this is the third score that you composed for a TV show or TV series after The Nick and Too Old to Die Young. How did you get the job and why did you say yes to this amazing project that is The Wilds?
I'm not sure how I got it. Oftentimes, picture editors will cut my music into a rough cut of a film or a TV show. And very often I get the job because the music seems to work. In The Wilds, for example, they use quite a bit of Too Old to Die Young, which, usually my favorite score is the last one I did.
I know.
And that is one of my favorite scores because I thought it was, it was weird, it was unusual, as was the show itself. So I have a feeling that that's what that may have gotten the attention of the producers. And when I saw a rough cut with that music cut into it, I thought, okay, well they like kind of the nuttier music that I've written, so it's probably going to be a good experience, and it was.
Yes, it's a great score and it's a great series too. I love it.
Yeah, it was I think for me, I always like to challenge myself a little bit, not a lot, because I don't want to embarrass myself or the people that hired me. But I felt that the subject was about, mostly about teenage women.
Yeah.
Which I don't know a whole lot about. So I thought that was a bit of a challenge for me to do something like this.
Yes, in particular in The Wilds, how was the work process for you? Did you get to see any of the episodes before composing?
Oh yeah, they give you I was given a rough cut of each episode to work to, and I don't know, most of the episodes were about 90% complete.
Okay.
Things get shortened, so yeah, I'm working with the actual picture.
It's more easy for you work this way, or it's difficult to see everything and work through the scenes?
Well, I have to see something. I mean, every time I have tried to write music to a script or a description, a scene description, it's been a disaster. So for me, the job doesn't really start until somebody gives me a picture to work to. Sometimes it's, it's in a rougher state than others, but when I saw each episode of The Wilds, it was about 90% together, so it was a pretty complete picture.
Cliff, you translate scenes, characters, feelings, and more into music. How does your brain work, and how do you do that?
You're going to definitely want to edit out this long pause while I...
No, it's okay. It's okay. You can.
Question.
Take your time. Take your time.
I mean, for me, and this is probably the way I grew up as a film composer in Hollywood, and a lot of my early projects were with Steven Soderbergh.
Yep.
And I was always encouraged to not really use the music to underscore the situation, but to use the music to underscore the psychology of the characters in a given situation. So I think that's what I'm always trying to do for the most part. I'm always leaning towards what is this character thinking and feeling, and trying to heighten that. Um, music can't solve every single problem in a film, but I often look at the music as I look at myself as a doctor. And what's wrong with the patient?
I understand. Yeah.
Sometimes maybe the film is moving too slowly. Sometimes things are not clearly understandable. Sometimes I feel like a performance is flat because you don't know what the character is feeling. So I tend to look at everything a scene at a time and try to repair. I mean, it sounds insulting to the director, but I try to build up what I feel are the weak
Yep.
aspects of the film. So that's a lot to think about. And how you do that with music, well, that's I don't even know how I would describe that. but I have a good instinct. I know when I've done something that works, I think, and I know when I've done something that isn't really helping and isn't doing much of anything. I'm probably my own harshest critic.
Great answer. Cliff, I note that you work in this score in The Wilds with female choirs or voices for this score. And why did you decide to use that particular sound?
Yeah. Firstly, it's one singer.
Oh, wow.
Her name is Ayana, and so sometimes I would double her voice, I would harmonize it, but it was basically just one person.
Nice.
And I never met her. She existed in a folder of vocal phrases that was given to me by one of the guys that works with me. His name is Greg Trippy, and Greg had recorded a bunch of Ayana's phrases for some other project that he never used.
Wow.
So I know that sounds kind of weird, like they're leftovers from a film that Greg didn't finish or something. But when I heard it, I just thought, I think I can use this. And it all started with episode 1, the very beginning of episode 1.
Yep.
And after that seemed to work, and it seemed like everybody approved and liked that music, then it just took off. I think Ayana she's in every single episode. There is some little bit of her voice in every episode, I believe.
It's beautiful and sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds.
I love it.
I'll have to meet her one day.
What is the difference between working on the music of a movie that is almost 2 hours long and a TV show that has around 8 episodes, 8 hours, 9 hours, etc.?
I always say that the biggest difference is The Wilds was like a 10-hour movie. I mean, it was a continuous story. But for me, the big challenge in doing that is your endurance, your creative endurance, and your physical endurance, because it goes on forever. And I find it kind of difficult to stay fresh and inspired. Like Too Old to Die Young, those episodes were like 2 hours long, and there was 10 of them. So that took a year. And to try to stay, to keep up that pace for a year is really a test of endurance. And to keep having fresh ideas and new ideas and to stay inspired. To me, that's the biggest challenge. So I think story-wise, it's often like it's still like a film. It's still a story, but the characters go on for 10 hours. So the thing I like about television is that your theme and variation ideas really get expanded on, and I like that. Otherwise, I think it's way too much work. I mean, The Wilds wasn't too bad because it got stretched out, because I was about into episode 5 when the pandemic hit, and that slowed things down considerably. So initially they had this crazy schedule, and then it ended up being a kind of a leisurely schedule. But to me, that's the hardest part, is like trying to, and I've never worked on a show where I had to the show had to air every week. It was like one show a week. I've never done that, and I don't think I would be capable of doing it.
Talking about pandemic and contagion, I have the album here. In 2011, you composed this score for this amazing movie directed by Steven Soderbergh. And today, almost 10 years later, we are experiencing a pandemic. At that time, would you have imagined something like this? And how would you describe the situation right now we are experiencing today through music?
Well, Steven always makes pictures that are, the power of Steven's pictures is that he treats his feature films almost like a documentary. They're very matter of fact. He doesn't like the music to pump up any kind of false, doesn't like to hype up the emotion or the drama. So Contagion felt like a pretty real, it was a horror film.
Yeah.
But it was a very real one. And I think while I was working on it, I started washing my hands a lot more. I started not touching my face. You know, if I would go somewhere in public and enter a building, I would press the elevator button with my elbow and not my. So it kind of freaked me out. It did what it did to me for viruses, what Jaws did for swimming in the ocean, or Psycho did for taking a shower. It just kind of freaked me out. And I think one of the chief technical advisors, Larry Brilliant, I think is his name, I've seen him on a lot of news since talking about the pandemic. So it was a very prophetic film, I think.
Yeah.
So here we are.
It's difficult, no, to work right now with this pandemic for you?
Well, if you work at all, yeah. I mean, after The Wilds, which started before the pandemic, I think it wrapped up in April or May, and I haven't worked since. And I just got my first job like about a week and a half ago since then. So, I mean, sometimes that's just the way it is. I'm self-employed. Sometimes you're popular, sometimes you're not. But all my colleagues are really struggling to find work because very few people are shooting anything. So not many things are in production. My next project is a documentary.
Oh, wow.
And so I understand documentaries, video games,
yeah,
animation, those are still going strong, but I don't get called for any of those things very often. But this documentary popped up and it's a good one, so I'm grateful for that. But as far as work goes, it's a friend of mine put a picture of himself working on Facebook. And it said, a composer at work. And it was just a picture of him sitting at his computer in front of his speakers. And then the next caption was, a composer at work in quarantine. And it was the exact same picture. So, I mean, I think composers, we are psychologically well equipped to deal with the pandemic because we work in isolation, and like myself, I kind of prefer it that way. I kind of like working alone.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Yeah.
My antisocial behavioral tendencies to good use, I think.
Yes. So, Cliff, what is the best thing to be a composer for music, for television or movies? And what is the worst thing?
Well, I think it depends on the project. Some projects are just, when I work on something like The Knick, I feel like I have the best job in the world. And then when you work on a job where the music you're getting beat up and everybody's telling you your children are ugly and then it becomes really difficult. So it can become miserable because, composers I take what I do very seriously. It's kind of a personal expression. And I try to put everything into it when I'm creating it. And then when I hand it off to the next step in the food chain, you have to be kind of dispassionate about it. And because it's going to pass through hands that are far less sympathetic than you are. So it's like if your daughter at age 19 wants to marry, a drug addicted wife abuser, then, you kind of have to let it go. It's like out of your hands. So, it can be challenging and difficult, but, I'm still fanatical about music. I'm still like a big music freak. So when everything is working well and I feel like creatively things are flowing, the people that you're working for are supportive and have lots of good ideas, it's my favorite thing in the world.
I know. Cliff, who is your favorite composer?
Of the film guys,
Yep.
it's the older guys. It's Bernard Herrmann and Ennio Morricone.
Yeah.
Composer. Gosh.
And actually, right now, some young composer that you admire.
Okay. Let me think. Well, I've always been a big fan of Thomas Newman. He's, innovative composer, and everything he does is pretty wildly original, and that's a quality I admire in any composer. I like Clint Mansell, I like Rolf Kent, I like Mark Mothersbaugh, I like kind of the guys that are really have a very unique individual sound. I'm trying to think of the new guys that I've heard. Ben Frost is kind of new.
Great, yes.
Off the top of my head, I guess that's all that come to mind.
That's
but
okay.
Yeah, I appreciate like guys that I really like composers' first scores where they don't exactly know what Hollywood wants from them. Like one of Mark Isham's first scores was the Hitcher, I believe. That was an awesome score. Graham Revell's first score was called Dead Calm. That was an amazing score. So a lot of these first attempt, like Stuart Copeland's first couple of film scores were amazing.
Wow. From drummer to drummer.
Well, yeah. I admire the drummers. Chris Young is another drummer. And Hellraiser was one of my favorite scores forever.
I'm going to show you the covers of some albums, and I would like you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay?
All right,
Okay.
I got it.
I will start.
Bum, 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 bum.
Great.
Is that a word?
Great. I love it. I love it.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay.
I got to talk about that.
Please.
My music teacher, Jack Smalley, always used to tell me that a theme to a film is really unimportant. What's important is what you do with it. And the example that he always used was ba-da-da-da, da-da-da. So that's really kind of two notes, but look what he did with it. Well, I often wonder what it was like when John Williams called up Steven Spielberg and said, "Steve, I got the thing that's going to make Jaws a hit." And he brings him over to his house and he sits down at the piano and goes, bum, 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 bum. Anyhow, I just get a kick every time I think of that score. Amazing score, amazing film. But, when you break it down to its body parts, it's really, unbelievably simplistic.
Yeah. Yes. So, the second one.
Oh, Gabriel's Flute, one of my favorite compositions of all time.
Great.
Did you say one word? You want me to say one word?
No, one word. It's difficult in one word, but the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
This one.
I was just listening to that yesterday.
Great.
I've become, as with Drive, I've become obsessed with synthesizers
Yep.
that sound old. And my latest thing is like the Rolands and sequential circuits synthesizers of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to a lot of John Carpenter, and the mothership of John Carpenter's scores is that score to Halloween.
Yes, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So you talk about Bernard Herrmann.
Well, probably a great score. Not one of my favorite is The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Wow.
Probably because of the electronic.
Yes, and he used the theremin too.
Yeah, and it was really just it was a real minimalist score. It was it was kind of like a forerunner of Philip Glass, and I mean it was anyhow. Taxi Driver, great score, but Bernard Herrmann, one of the two greats, maybe the greatest. I don't know.
Maybe, yes, maybe. This one?
I was listening to that last night too.
In other life, we were friends. We were close friends.
I was listening to that last night. That's really weird. And I haven't listened to it in a couple of years, but I listened to it last night. So I don't know what to say. Great score. I wish they had left the dialogue out of the...
Okay. Why?
Well, I'd like to hear nothing but the music.
Yeah. That's okay. It's okay. So, one of my favorites.
Well, you have good taste, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. So the last one is too important.
Oh yeah. Brings back, that was like my own personal Vietnam. Brings back a lot of good and bad memories. But that was my first time in the studio with a band, and it was pretty exciting, pretty intimidating, and very exciting. And it had a big impact on who and what I am as a musician today.
Yeah, I know. So Cliff, it was an honor. Thank you. I'm so honored. I am a huge fan of your work, really. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your music, and I will waiting for your next projects.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, and watch The Wilds.
Great. I love the series. Thank you, Cliff.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
You too.
Sometimes I feel guilty that we lied to her.
You did that to save her.